The proposed 11th edition of the United States Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices contains several figures for the design of separated bikeway intersections. Unfortunately, there are some issues. Let's take a look at figure 9E-7D, showing a separated bike lane shifting toward the road. This figure is supported by a text statement, which reads, quote, "A buffer-separated or separated bicycle lane may be shifted closer to or farther away from the adjacent general purpose lane depending upon site-specific conditions." The purpose of shifting a buffer-separated or separated bicycle lane toward the adjacent general purpose lane is to improve the visibility of bicycles to the adjacent traffic and avoid conflicts between turning vehicles and bicycles. Let's check out how this works. When the light is green, we see the rider come around the bend. As she does this, she enters into the frontal view frame of potentially right-turning motorists. Now the light has turned red, and this blue car is coming to a stop. What the driver of the blue car may not realize is while he was waiting, bicyclists have arrived to his right. This cone represents approximately what the car driver sees when looking straight. And if you don't believe me, check out this diagram from the World Road Association, showing the driver's cone of vision based on studies and shared in a report on the role of engineering in combating driver distraction and fatigue. When a driver wants to turn, it's human instinct to look in the direction they want to go. However, it's not most people's instinct to turn their heads 90 degrees in order to check for these bicycles. In fact, in the Netherlands and Denmark, two countries where motorists are most trained to look for cyclists at an intersection, road authorities still do not trust people to check this blind spot, and as such, they maintain engineering standards which do not support this design. One option to alleviate this conflict is to place the bicyclist to the left of right-turning motorists, forcing riders to interact with the turning car more like a motor vehicle operator than a pedestrian. This design philosophy was long the norm in the United States and even was prevalent in Europe during the 1950s. However, these types of designs introduce an additional set of conflicts and are unpopular with most bike lane users, especially women and children. One survey mentioned in the Federal Highway Administration's Bikeway Selection Guide even notes if the design is not perceived to be safe, most people will simply ignore the bike lane and ride on the sidewalk. There has to be a better way. The answer is simple. The bikes need to get out of the motorist's blind spot. To do this, we can push the bicycles forward so they are directly in the right turn sightline of the stopped driver. Now, when the driver looks to turn, they will immediately see someone on a bicycle and be more likely to take the appropriate action. Let's make this possible by introducing new striping. The fact that stop lines are in different locations could be confusing, so we'll add a curb or other channelizing device for organization. If this were constructed as shown, it would obviously block the sidewalk and interfere with the swept path of right-turning trucks, so we're going to have to move some things around. Starting with the sidewalk, what's currently shown on the Notice of Proposed Amendment figure is not good design. Especially in built-up areas where jurisdictions are likely to invest in bike lanes, the sidewalks are significantly more set back from the edge of pavement. This is where pedestrians will be tempted to cross. If we think about ramp locations, the proposed striping configuration would require placing ramps at the corner apexes. As Colorado DOT notes, quote, "One ramp servicing two crossing directions makes it difficult for motorists to determine which direction a pedestrian is preparing to cross. Corner ramps should be avoided wherever possible." And then they go on to state a few exceptions for retrofit situations only. Corner ramps are also problematic for people in wheelchairs, because instead of being able to move straight through the crosswalk, they have to turn at the bottom of the ramp within the roadway, and then travel up to the crosswalk before turning again. Because of these risks, Americans with Disabilities Act standards contain strict dimensions for the minimum maneuvering space at the bottom of the roadway. This design appears to be in violation of the minimum distance requirement between the ramp flare edge and edge of crosswalk. While the MUTCD obviously isn't a set of scaled construction plans, it does play an important role in influencing decisions, and as such, it should reflect sound design practice. To remedy the crosswalk problem, and the issue of bicyclists being placed in the motorist's blind spot, we could simply move the crosswalk and the motorist's stop line. To reduce speed, a key metric in whether vulnerable road users will survive accidents, we could add some traffic calming. The problem with this figure, and the one the Federal Highway Administration is proposing, is it doesn't make sense why the bike lane is being shifted towards the road. Recall the original figure showed a parking lane and a buffer. Knowing that parking lanes in the US are typically about 8 feet, the buffer on this figure comes to around 2 feet, which still isn't ideal for stopping people from opening their doors into bicycles. But it does mean that this crossing could be offset by at least 10 feet, or 3 meters. Even better yet, we can get rid of this curb and shoulder, both of which are in motor vehicle scale. We'll replace the curb with a bicycle-friendly mountable option, making the shoulder for the bike lane unnecessary. This also gives us an extra 3 feet at the intersection, bringing the total space available for an offset to 13 feet, or just under 4 meters. The optimal offset for a signalized protected intersection is somewhat debatable, but academic literature tends to support a value of 2 to 5 meters. So we have enough room for a protected intersection, and rather than placing traffic calming devices on the other side of the bikeway, the protected intersection makes more sense. There are cases where there's only enough room for a small buffer. To show how the forward stop bar should be designed in the narrow case, and better calm the speed of turning motorists, I created another figure. Now, not only do bicyclists wait in view of potentially turning motorists, they also get a slight head start crossing. This can be in addition to, or in place of any lead phase provided by a bicycle-specific signal head. And as you see, when the light turns green, the bicyclist will remain within the motorist's right view frame for some time. How long should the gap between the motorist and bicyclist stop line be? In the Netherlands, the design manual for bicycle traffic contains bullet points, which say, quote, "Placing stop line for stacking lane ahead leads to better visibility of cyclists, limiting blind spot. In the event of conflict between cyclists going straight on and car turning right, put stop line for stacking space 2 to 3 meters ahead of stop line for motorized traffic." The Danish road standard for signal-controlled intersections in rural areas uses even a larger setback, 5 meters. This is supported by the following statement. Quote, "In intersections with a cycle track or cycle lane on the approach road, the stop line for motor vehicles is drawn 5 meters back from the cycle stop line. This ensures that stationary, right-turning truck drivers immediately behind the stop line can see cyclists who are stopped at their stop line." In the United States, the National Association of City Transportation Officials has supported various types of forward stop lines and curb modifications. The Urban Bikeways Design Guide, for instance, notes even at smaller unsignalized intersections, moving the stop line up is beneficial as it, quote, "improves bicyclists' view of cross traffic and provides better visibility of bicyclists waiting for a crossing opportunity."